Juan Alanis began a career in public service on his 21st birthday when he proudly pinned on a badge as a law enforcement officer. For nearly 3 decades, he has dedicated his life to protecting others. Juan has received 3 awards for saving the lives of others, including a decoration for rescuing a child whose father was trying to burn down a house with his daughter inside it. The newly created 22nd Assembly District is more than just borders on a map for Juan. It is home. It is where he married his wife Barbara. It is where they raised their 3 children. It's where he has worked as a peace officer, protecting and serving in nearly every community in Stanislaus County over the course of his career. In the legislature, Juan hopes to bring his public safety experience to Sacramento, providing a voice of reason and common sense to the Capitol. In addition to helping shape policy that makes Californians safer, Juan will fight to reduce the cost of living for working class families, protect the Central Valley's water rights, and be a true champion for the 22nd District agriculture and business communities. Welcome to the Modern Assyrian program on AGN. My name is Carmen Morad. I am delighted today to have a very special guest, Assembly Member Juan Alanis, all the way from Sacramento. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here, Carmen.
It is a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for making time out of your busy schedule. I know you have a special session today in Sacramento, and you've made time to be on this program, and as usual, acknowledge the Assyrian community. Thank you for doing that.
Well, you're welcome. And Assyrian community is very big for us in our district, and a lot of my friends are in that community as well, so thank you.
Absolutely. Just to give some background to our viewers, Assemblyman, I want to begin by thanking you for your service. You served in the Stanislaus County Sheriff Department for years and years. You protected us, and you've done so many amazing things. And now you have a different capacity in your service as an assemblyman in the California State Legislature in the newly drawn 22nd District. What is it like to still serve, but have a different capacity as a as a peace officer? You implemented the laws that were already set in place. But now, in your new capacity, you get to actually write the bills, introduce them, and hopefully pass them for quality of life for your constituents in the district. Please share with us how that is coming about.
Of course. So yeah, I went from enforcing to making laws now, and I spent almost 3 decades at the sheriff's office, and I retired as a sergeant there, and I got to see the laws change over the years and basically cater to criminals with the victims and the people of California who are doing the right thing, doing what they're supposed to be doing, basically left behind. And I couldn't fix that as a sergeant with the sheriff's office. The only way you could fix that is by coming up to Sacramento. So I'm up here now. I proudly am representing the newly formed District 22, as you had mentioned. And it's very different up here. One of the big things I tell people the difference is between being a sergeant and being an assembly member is now every day I have to figure out what I'm going to wear. It's not a matter of picking out a short sleeve or a long sleeve uniform. Now it's like, what suit am I going to wear? What tie? That kind of thing. But overall, great time up here. I'm very happy I get to share my experience in law enforcement up here, and I get to speak on bills where I don't need a piece of paper in front of me to give me stats or what to say. It's like I lived it. I know it. It's mm-hmm. what I am, who I am, and I get to share it with the other 79 assembly members up here. And I've had the opportunity to speak many times in public safety, where I'm the vice chair, and speak on bills that I've noticed that experts who have come to testify, saying what should be correct and true, to the point to where I have to correct them and steer them a different way and let them know that is not actually how it's done in law enforcement. And so my colleagues get to learn a little more in depth with my experience. And then speaking on the floor, that's a big thing also. And we just introduced a lot of bills, and some of the bills didn't really sit well with me, especially coming from law enforcement and wanting to make sure that I provide the best public safety I can for California. So I've had to actually speak up on some of them in against them in opposition, and was very successful actually in making sure that some of the bills did not come into law, and keeping our district and Californians in mind every time I speak.
Thank you for sharing that insight with us. You are uniquely qualified to be there because what looks good on paper and what is recommended to be a law, depending who it benefits. But like you said so eloquently, you have lived it, you have served it. So you know when you see a change how it can affect. Very interesting. I remember this when I was interviewing someone in law enforcement. He said, when you come in contact with us, it's not a pleasant experience. You either are a victim of a crime or you're allegedly the perpetrator. So, what really happens is how the laws are written, how these bills are introduced, and how they are implemented. And I love what you just said recently. You saw that the laws and the bills being introduced were benefiting the criminals. Can you elaborate on that and share with us some of the bills that you believe in that should be passed? And to follow up with that, what is it our role as constituents? Because I'm a recipient of all the emails and newsletters from your office. And you do ask that there's action required. You do want us to get involved. Please share with us what is our role as constituents to help you to make sure these bills are successful and are passed.
I do, and definitely. For the most part, the representatives in our area, I think, are doing a great job as far as keeping public safety in mind. It's reaching out. I usually advise people, if you have family members, relatives that live in other areas of the state, that could also reach out to their elected officials and let them know how they feel, because a lot of the members up here are from Los Angeles or from the Bay Area, and they have their own unique problems and they have their own unique ways of solving it. But unfortunately, those unique ways also carry across the rest of the state. And like in our area, we're pretty much law and order. We still believe in consequences. We still believe that people have the right to feel safe in their homes, at work, traveling. And unfortunately, right now, the way California is set up is to the point to where people aren't held to consequences. They don't have anything to worry about, and so they get away with it, and they're allowed to do it. So one great example I want to bring up is Prop 47. Prop 47 was a bill, or everybody voted on it. It was a proposition, and what it did is it took drug possessions down from what used to be a felony down to a misdemeanor. So now what that means for everybody who's not aware of that, as a law enforcement officer, a felony did not need to be created or happen in my presence, whereas a misdemeanor, it does need to. And also, with it being a misdemeanor, and it is being a drug-related charge where a police officer comes into contact with this person, they'll get most likely a citation. And they'll sign a promise to appear. Nothing really happens. And so what I try and encourage with people is that going to jail is not really a bad thing. Sometimes that's people's turnaround. That's their rock bottom. And so then that's where they get their counseling and ways to find routes to getting a job, or maybe getting their families back. And that only happens when they go through these programs. And not many people who are out on drugs are just going to say, you know what, I want to go get rehab. I want to take care of myself. It doesn't normally work that way. It's usually when there's that carrot on that stick that says, hey, you can look at 3 or 4 years of prison, or you can get yourself cleaned up, get your family, get a job, and be more productive. That usually gets them to do that. Well, California has taken away that stick. And so that doesn't happen anymore. And the other part of Prop 47 affects our small businesses, our businesses in California in total. As you may know, we've had a lot of businesses leave the state of California. We've had some shut down because they just can't handle it anymore. There's so much theft going on. The retail theft is is just growing. If you look at San Francisco has had some really big retailers that have specifically said they're leaving San Francisco and they're not going to come back. And that's happening throughout the state. So Prop 47 took grand theft, which used to be $400, and took it up to $950. And so now, unfortunately, the criminals all know, hey, I can steal $949 worth of merchandise. It's a misdemeanor. The cops can't arrest me on it, and I'm going to walk out the door. They don't even run out the door anymore. Actually, there's even some security footage where they're just waving as they're going out the door. And they just expect these small businesses to be able to survive by getting hit like that every day. So that's why you also see a lot of these, like the deodorants and the shampoos, locked up behind like plexiglass because of the theft. So what that does, unfortunately, for my colleagues up here who are trying their best to help the underserved, low-income areas, are actually doing more harm to them. Because I've actually spoke with the retailers here in California, and they've advised me that they unfortunately have to shut down these stores that they have in those low-income, underserved communities. So now people who are disabled, veterans, elderly, who have a hard time getting to a pharmacy or just to the grocery store, now have to travel further into town to go make that happen. And that's unfortunately because of Prop 47. So bills that I've introduced. One was originally to completely get rid of Prop 47. And that was my intention. But up here in Sacramento, I've learned very quick that that is not going to happen. A lot of the assembly members up here go off of data. They want to see numbers. They don't want to see any more days added to a sentence as far as consequences go. So my team and I, working with our public safety team as well, came up with a bill to do a study on the retail theft. I want to prove to my colleagues up here that this is actually hurting California more than it's helping. Some of my colleagues take pride in that we're closing prisons down and we're saving $100 million. And so I want to say, well, that is nothing compared to the retail theft. We have a very large store just south of our district. They reported last year losing over $4 million in retail theft. Wow. That's just one store. So imagine if I get this bill to show all the data in the rest of the state, those numbers are going to be huge, and it's going to prove that this really did not help California.
Absolutely. I love what you said about how people other than the district can call. Data is important, but so is input. I have seen hearings at the Capitol where there's a list of people that show up at certain hearings, and they can actually address their concern. You pretty much hit the ground running when you went to Sacramento. A lot of people or a lot of candidates make promises during campaign season, but you actually lived up to it and you are getting the work done. How are you doing when it comes to passing these bills? Because remember what you said about it's difficult to end propositions. The difference between a proposition and a bill is not something that every constituent knows or understands. I always ask when I have the opportunity of our elected officials, lawmakers, to tell us the difference. Some propositions, the last one we had one that was 17 pages long. Your average person is not going to understand. The League of Women Voters does a good job at explaining propositions. And one of the questions that is asked is, who wrote this proposition, who is financing it, and who will benefit from it, right? So that's the difference between a proposition and a bill. And does it have a limit? Does it have a sundown, as we call it? How do we become more savvy, Assemblyman, when it comes to voting for propositions? Because we see millions and millions of dollars into advertising. We are bombarded by flyers in our homes. And it's really hard to decipher is it a vote, yes or no, or as a bill that is being introduced? How do we show? Because this program is seen it's global, and not only people in California can watch it, But there are people who live in other districts, Assemblyman, that have family in Turlock, for example. You know, Assyrians, Turlock is the epicenter of every Assyrian knows or has a relative who lives here. We just go by that. But it's also a place where people come to retire. They come to vacation to visit relatives. So quality of life matters. And the premise of this program has always been civic engagement. It's not a political program, but we want our viewers and constituents to be informed so they can make informed decisions. And one of the reasons when we started this program was with your friend and colleague, Assemblyman Heath Flora. He is what I call a champion of our community on so many levels. And with this newly drawn district, I am so looking forward to working with you, Assemblyman Alanis, because you understand the communities as diverse as this district is. But the Assyrian community is such a vibrant community. There's a lot of members of our community that are politically engaged, civically engaged, or just want to know what is their role? How can they be a productive member of their community and give back? And that takes me to my next question. You participated in Government Night in Turlock not too long ago. Our friend Supervisor Vito Chiesa is very good at organizing these events. I participated via Zoom. We had our new Congressman Duarte. We had Senator Marie Alvarado Gil, and of course yourself and Mayor Amy Bublak. And what was the tone that you had being in a room with your constituents? I heard a lot about law enforcement, fentanyl, substance abuse, and mental health. What was the majority of the concerns that you heard from your constituents that were present?
That was actually a pretty good night. I was glad Vito set that up, and I look forward to doing that again. As far as the mood in the room, I was I was honestly expecting to have more of a negative crowd being there, and obviously the Turlock Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, along with my own state Sergeant at Arms agencies were all prepared for that. But it was actually a very welcoming and inviting crowd, is what I got from it. And yes, a lot of those fentanyl, public safety did come up, but another one that had come up, which was a very caring and loving family that spoke up, was their son, who has a learning disability, is part of a program that we have in Stanislaus County called the Howard Prep, or the Howard Prep Training Center, if you remember that. And they were mentioning how up in Sacramento, up here, we want to, and these are part of those. This happens in bills a lot. You have good intentions, but unfortunately unintended consequences. So they want minimum wage. There's a sub minimum wage that these young men and women are earning because they have to be supervised, but they still want to be out in the community. They still want to be part of the community. And their parents, like the ones that spoke up that night, love that their kid is part of it and is not just sitting at home in front of a TV, that he feels like he's giving back. And so this bill wants to get rid of the sub minimum wage and make sure they all get paid minimum wage. Well, if that happens, a lot of these businesses who are using their services will basically come to the conclusion to say, why do I want to pay somebody minimum wage that has to be supervised and have all these things, or is limited to this, when I could pay minimum wage to somebody else that has all that stuff? And so that puts a big bind on those businesses, on Howard Prep, and obviously for the families and those young men and women who are part of the program. And so that was a great concern that had came up also that night. But overall, I think the big message, regardless of what was brought up and what was answered and what questions came up, I think the community liked that they had an engagement, had an actual contact or relationship with their electeds. And I think that is amazing. I'm happy that they still continue to reach out. I have my field reps in my district office that get phone calls and emails every day from our constituents. And I'm very proud of my team up here in Sacramento and down there in the district they're doing a great job. They're finding solutions to some of the problems, and they're out at events. Obviously, I'm up here. I would love to be in our district doing those things, but I have to be up here fighting the fight for us for District 22.
Absolutely. And we appreciate all that you have done. As I mentioned earlier, you hit the ground running. You went right to work. You knew what needed to be done. And, you mentioned your field reps. As a planning commissioner for the county, I see your field reps at every meeting, whether it's Board of Supervisors or anything that has to do with community outreach. They really go above and beyond. You have very good representation in the community, and they do a good job. And I always mention, since we have this media platform in our community, Assemblyman, we want to make sure that our viewers understand what a state legislature or an assembly office does to the services. Whether it's unemployment, whether it's DMV. DMV is a huge issue when it comes to non-English speaking or maybe unserved, underserved communities. We all need to have a driver's license. Everybody needs to have an ID or other issues that come up. So we need to start a conversation with you, Assemblyman, on having some kind of representation at DMV offices when it comes to the Assyrian constituency, to make sure that everyone can have a more positive, let's say, experience. But let me take you back to last year, August 7th, 2022. You were gracious enough to present certificates of appreciation from the California State Legislature to organizers and presenters and participants. Um, as you know, genocide is one of the things that really propels the Assyrian community into telling our story. There was an incredible exhibition that was put together at CSU Stanislaus, and we had scholars and different representation. And in the beginning of the exhibition, Assemblyman Heath Flora presented the organizers and CSU Stanislaus with the resolution, which he brought to the floor and passed. I wanted to thank you for being there, because even though you were not, it was before the election, but you participated, you were there. And being close to our diverse communities in the district, it makes us feel valued and welcome. Whether it's the New Year's, the Assyrian New Year, and any event that has to do with remembrance of whether it's the Assyrian martyrs or genocide, it really brings us closer to our elected officials. And I wanted to thank you for being there. What was your takeaway when you saw, all the speakers, the attendees, and we want to make sure that non-Assyrians attend as well?
Well, I'm a strong believer in knowing your history, and there's nothing wrong with good or bad knowing your history. Obviously, I want people to take pride in their history, but also learn from it as well. And that was a great event. I learned a lot myself, and I thought I knew most of what had happened, but it was good to learn that. And I would like to see maybe some more advertisement on that, to making sure that we get a bigger audience to learn more. And I don't know if I'd be able to help with that. Obviously, I'll do the best I can. But if and when you guys may have another one on an educational purposes platform, and I know our country, not necessarily our state, but our country is trying to get us to forget about our history and where we came from. And again, if it's good or bad, we still need to learn from it. And I think the Assyrian community is doing a great job of making sure that everybody remembers like where we came from or where we survived from, and just appreciate their culture even more. And it was a great learning experience there. I got to meet some people I didn't know. I got to see a lot of people I did know there, and it was good to come together. But even after the presentation, we got to go over to the other building and see all the artifacts, and that took it to a different level there. And I was very proud to see all of that was going on there. So thank you for being part of that, and thank you for your group for making that happen.
Absolutely. Stanislaus County in particular, as a part of your district, Turlock has over a century, 120 years of history of Assyrian settlers. And as we have our elected officials, and again, every 10 years with the census, we see a change in the district. We would love to work with you and your office to make sure that more Assyrians know about your office, about what you're working on, about how we can contribute, whether it's calling on some of these bills to provide support, to make sure people understand that this bill will impact their quality of life and it is in the same line as what their values are. So we would like to use this platform to actually help you, as you've been helping the constituents, to see how we can contribute and give back. As a part of civic engagement, I think it's very important. And this program tends to do that, to bring us closer together, to understand each other better, to make sure that the values that we believe in, that you're fighting for in Sacramento, and at a very, I want to say, pivotal time, because budgets don't really agree with what people want to see in a bill. And sometimes, as we mentioned in our discussion, propositions can actually be something that isn't really beneficiary to victims of crime, as you mentioned. So, in closing, Assemblyman, please share with us, what is it that you want our viewers, people who are in tune with civic engagement and want to get to know you better, how can we invite you to come to our events, for example, or invite us to come to Sacramento? How we can have members of the Assyrian community intern for you, whether at your district office or in Sacramento.
Those are all great ideas, and let's start doing that right now. But as far as the propositions go, unfortunately, some of them are very misleading. Bringing Prop 47 up. A lot of people don't probably remember it being Prop 47. They probably remember Safe Schools was part of the title, and Safe Neighborhoods. And everybody's like, yeah, of course I'll vote for that. But that was not what it was about. So they tricked you. They tricked us. But as far as getting the details into bills, it's always great to look ahead, or maybe reach out to your electeds, like my office, and find out a little bit about the bill as much as you can before you at least get an educated vote on it. Unfortunately, a lot of us are procrastinators, and we wait till that last second when we're just trying to fill everything out and read everything as fast as we can. But if they have time, hopefully they could reach out and actually find out exactly what these bills or what these propositions are about. And as far as helping me out, reaching out to the community, we have a Facebook, we have a lot of social media outlets that people can be part of. We also have an email list. I have my offices in Modesto. I have it's at 1010 10th Street on the 5th floor, and my staff's there Monday through Friday. More than happy to help people out. A lot of people have problems, like you mentioned, with DMV. You got EDD. A lot of state agencies that maybe need some encouragement or maybe some little help to help our constituents out. We also get a lot of people coming with us with federal problems, which we're happy to also help navigate that as well. We'll direct them to Congressman Duarte or McClintock, and help them out that way. So we have no problem doing that, and we have a great working relationship with those two offices as well as Senator Maria Alvarado Gil. Her and I have been on bills together. We've helped fight for bills together, and we show a very, very united front on what we do, and I'm very proud of that as well. And she's got it in the Senate, and I got it in the Assembly, so it's a great team there. As far as helping out with bills, we've introduced all of our bills for now, and I'm happy to say that our first one was actually signed by the governor yesterday. It was AB 1467. It's our Nevaeh Youth Sports Safety Act. And what that entails is AEDs, automatic external defibrillators, which a lot of people got to see work on a football field. If you remember seeing that football game where the player went down, they used an AED, brought him back to life. Well, that's what we're trying to provide for our kids right now in schools. as the law is written now, or before, I should say, before this bill, it had to be available for the students during school hours and school activities. Well, it didn't say after hours. So we have kids in Turlock and Waterford and Ceres, Modesto. They use the fields after schools are out. And what has happened, unfortunately, in Waterford, we had a 10-year-old, Nevaeh, who collapsed, and she could have used an AED to help save her, but unfortunately, it was not available. It was on campus, but not accessible. And so I want to make sure that something as simple fix as that would allow them to save our lives of our children. We also had a case like this in Manteca also. So it's something that we can easily fix. The technology's there, and save some lives by doing that. But my point with some of these bills that we have is I don't just like come up with them. I have my team that reaches out and finds bills that we need to bring or fix some laws. So if you have a great idea of something that could help Californians, please reach out to my office and let us know, and we will work with you. We already have a couple bills that we're working on right now that people have brought up that we're going to introduce next session. And
Awesome.
I more than welcome that. Obviously, public safety is a big thing for me, so I can work on those really quick. But like with the Nevaeh Youth Sports Safety Act, that does have to do with public safety, not necessarily law enforcement with me, but something that I care about, and I think all of us care about our children. So I also have my Sacramento office. It's here in Sacramento. We're on the 4th floor. It's what's called the swing space, just across from the Capitol. If people are in Sacramento, please come by. I may not always be here. I may be in session or in committees. I'm on 7 committees, so very busy. But I do have some locals come by sometimes, or they schedule a meeting with me, and I get to see them here. And my scheduler, if you guys want her emails, it's lauren.smith@asm.ca.gov. And she would love to schedule something either here in Sacramento, or if I have time, we can do it in the district as well. Always welcome.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all that information. I'm actually looking forward to doing a follow-up interview with you at the Capitol, so we can have a better a view. We've been to the Capitol, a beautiful place in Sacramento. It's very welcoming to constituents, and it really is a great idea to invite people who voted for you in your district to be able to share their ideas with you. And just like you mentioned, a small detail or a change in a bill can save a life. Boy, what an important step to take. Thank you for sharing that with us. Assemblyman Juan Alanis, I could talk to you for hours, but we are limited in time. Thank you for making time to have a conversation with me and to share your ideas, your vision, and your goals with the Assyrian community. I welcome you to come back anytime you have any announcements or anything that you need the support of constituents and non-constituents in California. You are always welcome to come back on this program.
Thank you, Carmen. And thank you for all your viewers too. And please reach out if you need me.
Thank you very much. We will share the phone numbers, the emails, the addresses. Again, thank you for all you do, for your service. This concludes my conversation and my interview with Assemblyman Juan Alanis from the California State Legislature, 22nd District. I'll see you on the next Modern Assyrian.